Emmanuel Community.
Welcome to Celebrate Aging. I'm Vicki Marthaler, your hostess today. Here at Emmanuel Community, we are always learning something new, maybe something that we've thought about and thought, oh, I don't know, that's kind of complicated. So you know what? Today we've got a lawyer with us.
I'll make it more complicated.
You're going to make it more complicated?
Yeah.
No, you won't, Sam. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Emmanuel. This is Sam Roofer from Detroit Lakes, and the office you're in is?
The Pemberton Law Firm in Detroit Lakes.
The Pemberton Law Firm. And we have questions we're going to ask you today.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. And our social worker said, you know, Vicki, sometimes people are faced with decision making and they need things like guardianships or conservator things, or
Sure.
I don't even know what the words are.
Yeah.
Could you kind of introduce us to that?
Sure. Well, what you're talking about is most likely a guardianship or conservatorship. And that's the process of the legal system and the courts giving someone control over another person's legal decisions and financial decisions.
Okay.
And so those are what the two words mean. A guardianship is control over someone's legal decisions, and a conservatorship is control over someone's financial decisions. Most typically, it's kind of one person serves both roles. So they would petition the court to become a guardian and conservator over a person.
Oh, okay.
And so legal decisions are things like, would they come to stay at Emmanuel? Can they stay in their home? Where are they going to get their medical treatment? Those sort of kind of legal decisions for a person. Conservatorship is the financial decisions about paying bills, managing the bank account, and doing those sorts of things.
How do you know if a person needs a guardianship?
Well, most times it's pretty clear. It's usually when someone loses the capacity to make those decisions for themselves. And it is a legal process where you petition the court, and typically there's a hearing and a judge presides over it. And the court will appoint an attorney for that person, and usually they're called the proposed ward is the person. And that attorney will usually sit down and try and meet with them, and oftentimes there's a court-appointed visitor, another person that comes in and kind of does an assessment of the person to determine whether or not they do need this guardianship or conservatorship. And most of the time it's pretty cut and dried. A person has reached the point where it's pretty clear to everyone that it can't be done. Sometimes there are disputes over it. Sometimes people feel that they don't need one. Their attorney that visits with them and is appointed for them may feel that they don't need one. And it can lead to a judge deciding whether or not that person needs a guardian or conservator. Oftentimes they don't go that far, but that can happen.
It can happen.
Yep.
Is there anything easier than a guardianship or a conservator?
Well, there can be. It gets to the point of a guardianship or conservatorship because the person has lost the capacity to make those decisions for themselves. When they still have that capacity, they can sign just a simple power of attorney. There's a Minnesota statutory short form power of attorney, which gives someone else the decision to make legal and financial decisions for you, selling your house and opening bank accounts and selling assets and doing whatever you might need to do. And a power of attorney is going to cover most of the situations that would arise in a guardianship or conservatorship. Sometimes it gets to the point where you need to do that anyway.
Okay.
But a power of attorney is fairly inexpensive to do up front, whereas a guardianship or conservatorship is a little more costly on the back end to do. And so having that in place before you get to the point where you can't make those decisions for yourself is a good idea.
Well, I bring up power of attorney. That's the right word, right?
Yep, power of attorney, yep.
Just checking. I heard someone said, well, you know what, I went online and I did like a will thing. You can find so many things on the internet. And
Sure.
I was going to kind of just ask about that. Is that something, too, that...
Yeah, people do wills on the internet. I don't know if people do powers of attorney on the internet or not. And they can work, for some people.
Okay.
The problem is it's a form you fill out, and that form doesn't have any ability to kind of get to know that person's special circumstances,
Sure.
to know what sort of things might need to be included in a will or taken out of a will. I've seen some articles and studies where people have done it and said, well, here's my situation. I'm going to go to these 3 websites and see what I get. And every once in a while it works out okay. But, a will's not something you want to really play around with. It's not that expensive to go to an attorney and have a will done. And also along those lines, I've seen a lot of people that do kind of a handwritten will. They'll take a sheet of paper and say, I'm leaving my, house to my son and my bank accounts to my daughter and that sort of thing. And that doesn't work. People don't realize that. There's statutory requirements in Minnesota for how a will has to be done. You can certainly handwrite your own will,
Okay.
but there's requirements such as having it notarized and witnessed.
Okay.
Yeah, and
No,
so
that makes sense. That
Yep.
makes total sense.
right. And so if that doesn't happen, that will's invalid, and
Right.
it's not going to do anything. So I recommend at the very least talk to an attorney and ask them, I've done this. Is this good enough? And I'm not there to just take people's money, and despite what people think about
You're there
attorneys.
to help people,
Right.
and help things make
Yep.
it easier.
So if what they have is good enough, I'll certainly let them know that
Sure,
what you've got is
sure.
good enough, and you don't need to do anything else for now.
There's nothing like talking with people who know what's going on, so that there aren't any loose ends or things that will come up, and so that's good to know. Now, you mentioned about an estate. When I think of my husband and I, we have a will, and somebody said, so what's going to happen with your estate? And I just laugh because I'm going, to me, an estate is like land and grounds and,
Right.
all kinds of stuff. And basically we have a house that we probably still owe money on, and
Yeah.
and an old car.
Yep.
So that's our estate. But what is an estate, and how do you
Sure.
tell me about this will stuff?
Well, you don't need to have millions of dollars and thousands of acres of land and all that to have an estate. An estate is just simply whatever you have when you pass away. I mean, it could be a cardboard box that holds all your possessions, or it could be a house, or it could be a house and a lake cabin. I mean, it's just whatever you have.
Okay.
So size doesn't matter when it comes to an estate. It can be a big estate or a small estate.
Okay.
And basically, then you want to have an estate plan when you're looking, towards making some of those decisions. And a typical estate plan, at the very minimum, should include a will, and then it could include a power of attorney, like we discussed. A healthcare directive, which is used to be called a living will or a healthcare power of attorney.
Healthcare directive. That's another thing that we should. Okay, we'll
Right.
keep going
Yeah.
we'll keep going about the estate here first.
A healthcare directive is similar to a power of attorney, but for healthcare decisions. And,
Okay.
and certainly we could spend 10 minutes talking just about that. And sometimes an estate plan may include some trusts, depending on the type of estate you have and whether estate taxes become a concern. And then when you have those assets and you have a will, the will kind of is in the instructions for your personal representative,
Right.
Of how you want your estate to be distributed. And then there's a process called probate, which is the court's supervision of those instructions. Basically, it's the court's process of making sure your wishes are followed out or carried out, and the title to your assets is transferred the way it should be.
What if you don't have a will and you pass away? Then
Well,
what?
again, it's kind of like the internet thing. Sometimes it works out okay. There's if you pass away without a will, it's called passing away intestate, and there's a statute in Minnesota. It's called the intestacy statute. That says, well, if you don't have a will, here's how your things go. And
Okay.
if you have a fairly traditional family, husband and wife and 2 kids and 2 grandkids each or something like that, and you plan to just distribute everything equally anyway,
Yes.
you're probably going to be okay.
All right.
But if you have any sort of different family situations, divorces or adoptions, remarriages, if you have any kind of inequality in your distribution, that you've given one child some money during life and so they're going to get something else, chances are if you pass away without a will, your estate won't be distributed the way you would want it to be distributed.
So it's important to be checking up on all this stuff. Well, Sam, I know you brought me some questions, and
In small font.
I know, in small font. I mean, I have to put my glasses on practically. But an attorney is, I would say, a friend, someone who wants to help you do the planning that needs to be done, because we don't know what our future holds, and our life the way it is now. We
Certainly.
probably have ideas about how we'd like it to go. So an attorney is a friend who wants to help you do the right thing and help you plan your life and plan your time. So this is Sam. Sam's got good advice for you. If you have any more questions, you could certainly call Sam. He'd be happy to walk you through.
Certainly.
Also, you can call here at Emmanuel and talk to our social worker, Sue Sorensen, and she will be glad to say, let's sit down and look at all the options, and we can make some connections for you, because we do want you to be making good choices. This is Vicki at Emmanuel wishing you the best.